To doctors of Reddit. What's the craziest shit you have ever seen? Not me but my cousin. She knew she wanted to marry her fellow pathologist boyfriend, at the time, when he called her over to look at a picture on his computer, of a woman spread eagle that had a small suspicious patch on the outside of one labia. It was one of those weird porn solicitation emails that were really common in the early 2000s. He wanted her to look at it to confirm his suspicions and then emailed the address back stating he wasn't interested but to go to a doctor immediately for testing. Close to a year later he got an email back, from a different email, thanking him for suggesting to go to a doctor because it was a melanoma. Guy is 10 out of 10. Cousin married well. He tells that story to everyone. Not the craziest but one of the most memorable. I was working urgent care early in my career and had a lady in her 60s check in for hemorrhoid for the past 2 weeks. Usually straightforward. Walk in the room and she describes the typical presentation of a hemorrhoid and states she's had them before. So I tell her to undress and put on a gown and I'd be back in with my chaperone. The MA and I walk in and she's bent over the exam table with her bare ass towards us and asks, "Do you see it?" It looked like there's a tail hanging out of her ass the size of an Arizona iced tea can, except it was her rectum and colon. She had a complete rectal prolapse. One of the worst I had seen. And she thought it was a hemorrhoid. Did an x-ray of a woman who had a surgery in Mexico and was complaining of abdominal pain. They had left the scissors in her. Was in medical school on inpatient psych. Happened right before I got on the rotation so I didn't directly see it but everyone was talking about it. Lady was in a schizophrenic episode and she pulled out her own eyeball with her finger and severed the vessels and nerves, then proceeded to eat her eye. She said it was because she wanted to see inside herself. Not me, but my wife. Shampoo bottle in rectum, entirely inside of it, had to be removed surgically. Edit. My wife is the doctor who saw it. Story from my mom. She is OBGYN in a high-risk hospital but a lady ended up barricading a room she was on PCP pretty hard. By the time the doctors got it opened with security help she already gave birth. For 3 days straight she was telling everyone how she was the doctor not them. Maggots in the face. They didn't even seem to mind. Edit. More info. They were meth users with terrible health, including terrible oral health. They had an oral cavity tumor that ate through their cheek. They mentioned flies landing on them but never noticed that their larvae were having a feast. We had to essentially power wash the area before actually operating. Don't do meth, kids. Don't smoke either. Mom had cardiac arrest. Ed set up emergency C-section. It was a bloodbath. Baby lived. What you're looking for is the Reddit story swamps of Dagoba. You're welcome. Not a doctor but work in healthcare. Sexual assault of children is inarguably the worst, especially when they're under the age of 10. Some humans truly don't deserve to share our oxygen and you'll spend the rest of your life trying to understand how anybody could do something so cruel. I had a frequent flyer who would cheek her meds, then when the nurse left she'd crush them and mix them with urine from her urostomy bag and inject into her IVs. We knew she was doing it because her blood cultures would grow 4 different unrelated bacteria. I'm not a doctor but a paramedic. I once went to a man who was found in cardiac arrest with a half-eaten Big Mac next to him. About 2 minutes of CPR and he ROSCD, return of spontaneous circulation, and sat up. He was confused for all of 10 seconds before he looked at his Big Mac, looked at us, said thank you and then processed to scoff and finish the rest of his burger and joked, "Can't forget that." We got him to hospital but not sure what happened to him after that. Last week, a lady was brought into the emergency ward and guess what's the problem? She stuck up a large cucumber in there and I don't know how it happened but it ended up breaking into halves inside of her and she can't pull out the upper half. It was really a crazy day. Guy stood in front of a large firework. Basically had a small rocket sticking through his abdomen. To add to your major trauma to the head, mention. There is a famous case that is absolutely chilling that I've heard a few times. A police department received numerous 911 calls from people who claimed that a man in a terrifying zombie monster mask was banging on their doors. He went to numerous addresses and scared an entire community. When the police responded, they learned that it was much worse than they expected. The man wasn't wearing a mask. He had shot himself in the face with a shotgun, and unfortunately survived the ordeal. In a panic, he ran door to door seeking help, but none of the residents could understand that the horrific mask he wore was in fact an actually traumatic facial injury. He died shortly after police responded.